Hi everyone, welcome to Emma, a true infidelity story. I'm excited to share a new story with you. The scent of fresh paint still lingered in the air, a testament to the mural I had just finished on our living room wall. It was a sprawling scene of a forest at twilight, with shades of purple and blue blending into the darkness where the eyes of nocturnal creatures gleamed with life. I stood back admiring my work, feeling a sense of accomplishment. This was my sanctuary, my canvas where I could pour out my soul. Jackdafer walked in, his eyes lighting up as he saw the mural. "Evelyn, this is incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, his warmth comforting. "You've outdone yourself again." We shared a moment, just the three of us, before Max bounded over his tail, wagging furiously, demanding his share of attention. I laughed, bending down to ruffle his fur. Yes, you're part of this family too, aren't you, Max?" Our life was a canvas of its own, painted with moments of joy, laughter, and the occasional brushstroke of chaos, usually brought on by Max's playful antics. But beneath this picture-perfect life there was a shadow, a secret that had begun to grow like mold in the corners of my mind. It started innocuous enough, a late-night work call from Jackdafer, his voice distant, the background noise a bit too lively for a typical office setting. I brushed it off, attributing it to a work event. But then there were the unexplained absences, the sudden business trips, and the lingering scent of a perfume that wasn't mine on his clothes. I remember the night when the first crack appeared in our seemingly flawless life. I was alone, Max late on a design project. When Max started Barmax, his first standing on end, I went to check, expecting to find a raccoon or some other nocturnal visitor. Instead, I found Jackdafer, his face flushed, his tea-I-ask standing in the doorway. "Evelyn, I can explain," he stammered, but his words were drowned out by the pounding of my heart that night. The silence between us was louder than any argument. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the mural's forest now seeming to mock me with its serene beauty. How could everything change so drastically? The days that followed were a blur. Jackdafer tried to talk, to explain, but his explanations were like patches on a canvas, never quite covering the tear. And then there was the discovery, a text message not meant for my eyes, from a number I didn't recognize. The words were simple, yet they carried the weight of betrayal. As I sit here now, months later, the mural has faded slightly, the colors less vibrant. Much like my trust in Jackdafer, the secret I've been carrying, the one that's been gnawing at my conscience, isn't just about his infidelity. It's about what I did in response. A decision so morally ambiguous, so out of character that it has left me questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. How did I, Evelyn, a woman who prided herself on her integrity, find myself in such a bizarre and morally complex situation? The answer lies in the shadows of our home, in the silence that followed that night, and in the choices I made when faced with the unraveling of my perfect life. The truth is, sometimes the most shockmax turns of events aren't the ones that happen to us, but the ones we choose to make. And as I look back, I realize that my story isn't just about what Jackdafer did, but about how I reacted, how I chose to paint over the cracks with a color so dark it might never wash away. It all started on a typical Friday night. Jackdafer was away on a business trip, leaving me and Max to enjoy our own little routines. I had planned a quiet evening with a glass of wine, some sketching, and perhaps a movie. Max, ever the loyal companion, lay at my feet, his head resting on my slippers. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the occasional sigh from Max. I decided to take a relaxing bath, something to unwind, after a week of deadlines and client meetings. Max followed me to the bathroom as he often did, sitting just outside the door, his ears perked up, listening to the sounds of water splashing. The bath was soothing, the warm water easing the tension from my muscles. I closed my eyes, letting the steam envelop me, but my mind wandered to Jackdafer, missing his presence. The water laced gently against my skin, the bubbles popping softly, a stark contrast to the storm brewing in my heart. But what happened next was something I never could have anticipated. The tranquility was shattered by the sound of my phone vibrating on the bathroom counter. I reached out, droplets of water trailing from my arm, and saw Jackdafer's name flashing on the screen. My heart skipped a beat, not with joy but with a sudden, inexplicable dread. "Hey, Evelyn." His voice came through a little too cheerful, a little too rehearsed. "Just check Max, and how's everything at home?" I paused, the warmth of the bath, now feeling like a trap. "Everything's fine." I lied, my voice studied despite the turmoil inside. "Max is here with me. How's your trip?" There was a brief silence filled only by the distant hum of what sounded like a bar or a restaurant. "Oh, it's going well, just wrapping up some meetings. I'll be home soon." I wanted to believe him, to cling to the normalcy of our conversation, but the background noise, the laughter, the click-macks of glasses, it all felt like a mockery of our life together. After hanging up, I lay back in the bath, the water now lukewarm, my thoughts racing. The scent of his cologne, the one he wore only for special occasions, lingered in my mind, mixed with the perfume I had smelled on his clothes. It was like an olfactory betrayal, a scent that didn't belong in our home. I climbed out of the bath, wrapping myself in a towel, feeling the weight of my suspicions. Max looked up at me, his eyes full of concern, as if he could sense the shift in my mood. I dressed quickly, my movements mechanical, my mind elsewhere. I wandered back to the living room, where the mural seemed to watch me, its serene forest, now a silent witness to my inner turmoil. I poured another glass of wine, not for relaxation, but to numb the growing pain. Sitting on the couch, I stared at my phone, the screen dark, but my mind replaying the conversation. Was he really at a business meeting, or was he somewhere else with someone else? The thought was like a knife slicing through the fabric of our relationship. Max, sensing my distress, jumped up beside me, his warm body pressing against mine. I stroked his fur, finding some comfort in his unconditional love. "What should I do, Max?" I whispered, knowing there was no answer, only the silent support of a loyal friend. The night stretched on, each tick of the clock, a reminder of the time Jackdafer was not here. I tried to sketch, to lose myself in the lines and shades, but every stroke felt like an accusation, every shadow a secret. I decided to check his phone records, something I had never done before. It felt like crossing a line, but the line had already been blurred by his actions. The phone was locked, but I knew as passcode the date of our anniversary. As I scrolled through the call logs, my heart sank. There were calls late at night to numbers I didn't recognize and texts too many to count, all from the same unknown number. The realization hit me like a wave, cold and overwhelming. Jackdafer was not just away on business. He was living a double life, one that I was not a part of. The pain was visceral, a physical ache in my ch**t, as if my heart was trying to escape the betrayal. I sat there, the wine glass now empty, the room spinning slightly. Max's head was in my lap, his eyes watching me with that deep, knowing look. "What do I do now?" I asked aloud, the question hanging in the air unanswered. The night deepened, and with it my resolve. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I needed to know the truth, to confront Jackdafer, to understand why our life had become this tangled web of deceit. But as I sat there plotting my next move, another thought crept in. Darker and more dangerous? What if I could turn the tables? What if I could make him feel the same betrayal, the same pain? The idea was seductive, a whisper in the shadows of my mind, promising retribution, but at what cost? And so, as the first light of dawn began to seep through the curtains, I made a decision that would change everything, not just for Jackdafer, but for me. I would find out who this other woman was, and I would confront them both, but not with anger, not with tears. I would confront them with a plan so intricate, so morally ambiguous, that it would either save our marriage or destroy it completely. The game had begun, and I was no longer just the betrayed wife. I was now the player, ready to paint over the cracks with a color so dark it might never wash away. After my bath, wrapped in a towel, I went to the kitchen to refill my wine. Max, sensing my movement, trotted after me in my slightly tipsy state. I didn't notice how close he was until I tripped over him, spilling wine all over myself. I couldn't help but laugh at my own clumsiness, the red wine staining the white towel like a splash of paint on a canvas. Deciding it was time for a change, I headed to the bedroom to slip into something more comfortable in the bedroom. As I was pulling on my pajamas, Max jumped onto the bed, something he rarely did. His playful demeanor was infectious, and I found myself wrestling with him, the towel slipping away in our playful scuffle. It was then, in a moment of confusion and blurred boundaries, that the unthinkable happened. Max, perhaps misdirected my playfulness for something else, mounted me in my shock, and the haze of alcohol. I didn't react immediately. The realization of what was happening hit me like a ton of bricks. But by then it was too late. What would Jactifer say if he found out the room spun around me? The walls closing in as the gravity of the situation settled in. My heart raced not just from the wine, but from the sheer absurdity and the moral complexity of what had just occurred. I pushed Max gently away, my mind racing with thoughts of Jactifer, of our life together, now tainted with this bizarre incident. I sat on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands, trying to process the event. Max, now lying beside me, seemed oblivious to the turmoil he had caused, his tail thumping softly against the mattress. The silence of the room was deafening, filled only with my heavy breathing and the distant hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. I knew I couldn't tell Jactifer. How could I explain this? The very thought of his reaction made my stomach churn. I imagined his face, the confusion, the hurt, the possible disgust. No, this was something I would have to keep to myself, a secret buried deep within the shadows of our home. I stood up, feeling the need to cleanse myself again, not just from the wine, but from the weight of what had happened. I walked back to the bathroom, the cold tiles under my feet, a stark contrast to the warmth of the bath I had enjoyed earlier. The mirror reflected a version of me I barely recognized, eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. Turning on the shower, I stepped under the hot water, letting it wash over me, hoping it could cleanse more than just my skin. As the water cascaded down, I replayed the night's events in my mind, the laughter, the playfulness, the sudden shift into something so wrong, so out of place in our life. I stayed under the water until it ran cold, my thoughts as tangled as the steam around me drying off. I wrapped myself in a fresh towel, avoiding the stained one from earlier. Back in the bedroom, I changed into a different set of pajamas, feeling the need to distance myself from the incident. Max watched me from the bed, his eyes following my every move. I couldn't look at him without feeling a pang of guilt and confusion. I lay down beside him, not touching, just staring at the ceiling. The mural in the living room coming to mind. The forest at twilight, once a symbol of peace, now seemed to hold secrets of its own, much like the one I was now harboring. The night stretched on and sleep was elusive. Every time I closed my eyes, the image of Max's playful confusion and my own inaction replayed in my mind. What did this say about me, about us, about the life we had built? As dawn approached, the first light filtering through the curtains, I made a silent vow. This would remain our secret. Mine and Max's. I would find a way to move past this, to keep this dark brush's stroke hidden beneath the vibrant colors of our life. But deep down I knew that this incident had painted over the cracks with a color so dark it might never wash away. The game had indeed begun, not just with Jactifer's betrayal, but with my own. A game where the stakes were higher than ever, where every move could either save or destroy what we had. And as I lay there, the weight of my secret pressing down on me, I realized that I was no longer just the betrayed wife. I was now complicit in a narrative far more complex and morally ambiguous than I could have ever imagined. The days following were a blur of guilt, shame, and confusion. Every time I looked at Max, a wave of nausea washed over me. His innocent eyes seemed to bore into my soul, accusing me silently of the unspeakable. I couldn't bear the thought of Jactifer's calls, knowing that each ring was a reminder of the secret I now harbored. My life, once so straightforward, now felt like a labyrinth of lies and self-loathing. I tried to rationalize it, telling myself it was an accident, a moment of madness. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized the gravity of what had occurred. I began to research, scouring the internet for any shred of information that could explain or perhaps justify my actions. But all I found were horror stories and condemnation stories of people who had crossed lines they never thought they would. Stories that echoed my own moral ambiguity. Max, sensing my distress, became more cling. His need for affection, once a comfort, now only intensified my guilt. I began to isolate myself, avoiding social interactions, fearing that my secret would somehow be visible on my face. Every conversation felt like a minefield, every laugh, a potential betrayal of my inner turmoil. Could I ever look at Jactifer the same way again? This question haunted me as specter. In every quiet moment, the man I loved, the man I had built a life with, now seemed like a stranger. How could I reconcile the love I felt with the betrayal I had committed, even if it was unintentional? The house, once our sanctuary, now felt like a prison of my own. The mural in the living room, which had once brought me such joy, now seemed to mock me with its serene beauty. Each brushstroke felt like a reminder of the life I had painted over, with deceit and confusion. I started to avoid the bedroom, the scene of the incident, choosing instead to sleep on the couch or in the guest room. Max would follow, his presence, a constant reminder of that night. I couldn't push him away. He was, after all, innocent in all of this, but his loyalty felt like a chain binding me to the guilt. I found myself at the kitchen, table 8 at night, staring into space, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. The wine bottle, once a symbol of relaxation, now stood as a testament to my attempts to drown out the noise in my head. But no amount of alcohol could wash away the stain on my conscience. The days turned into weeks, and with each passing day the weight of my secret grew heavier. I started to see Jactifer differently, not just as the man who had betrayed me, but as someone I had betrayed. In return, the complexity of our situation was overwhelming. I was no longer just the victim. I was now part of the problem. I began to question everything about myself. Was I the person I thought I was? Could I ever trust myself again? The answers eluded me, lost in the fog of my own guilt and confusion. One evening, as I sat alone, the silence of the house was broken by the sound of the front door. Jactifer was home early. Unexpectedly, my heart raced, not with joy but with panic. I hadn't prepared for this, hadn't rehearsed what I would say or how I would act. He walked in, his eyes scanning the room, perhaps Lumax for signs of my distress. "Evelyn, you're up late," he said, his voice carrying a mix of concern and fatigue. I managed to smile, but it felt brittle, like it might shatter at any moment. "Just couldn't sleep," I replied. My voice steadied. Despite the storm inside, he came over, his hand reaching out to touch my shoulder. I flinched, not from his touch, but from the fear of what he might see in my eyes. "Everything, Oka?" he asked, his brow furrowing. I nodded, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "Just work stress," I said, turning away to pour another glass of wine, hoping to mask my turmoil. Jactifer sat down beside me, his presence overwhelming. You can talk to me right about anything," he said, his voice earnest. The irony of his words was not lost on me here. He was offering support, while I harbored a secret that could shatter us. I wanted to tell him to unburden myself, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I sipped my wine, the silence between us growing, filled with unspoken truths and hidden betrayals. As he talked about his day, his voice a distant hum, I found myself retreating into my mind, replaying the incident over and over. Each time the outcome was the same, a decision made in a moment of confusion, now a permanent fixture in our lives. The night deepened, and with it my resolve to keep this secret grew stronger, not for Jactifer's sake, but for mine. I couldn't bear to see the look in his eyes if he knew I couldn't bear to see the trust, already fragile, crumble completely. So I sat there nodding at the right times, laughing when expected. But inside I was a storm of emotions. The game I had started not just with Jactifer's betrayal, but with my own was far from over. And as I looked at him, the man I loved, I realized that the path I had chosen was one of shadows, where every step could either lead to salvation or damnation. The complexity of our situation was now a part of me, a dark brushstroke on the canvas of our life, one that might never wash away. The climax came unexpectedly one evening when Jactifer returned home earlier than planned. He found me in the living room, staring blankly at the TV with Max lying beside me. His cheerful greeting turned into concern. "What?" he saw my expression. "What's wrong, Evelyn?" he asked, his voice filled with worry. The words caught in my throat. I wanted to tell him to unburden myself, but the fear of losing him, of destroying our life together, was paralyzing. I did something terrible, Jack. I managed to whisper, tears streaming down my face. Jactifer's face turned pale, his mind racing through scenarios. What is it? Evelyn, you can tell me anything? Would he ever forgive me? I took a deep breath, the weight of my secret pressing down on me. It was an accident. Jack. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was just a moment of confusion, of everything being too much. His eyes searched mine, trying to piece together the puzzle of my distress. What happened? Evelyn, please tell me. I hesitated, the words heavy on my tongue, after you called that night when you were away. I was upset. I had too much to drink. And Max, he was just playing, but things got out of hand. I didn't stop it in time, and I'm so sorry. Jackdafer's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to a pained understanding. He sat down beside me, his hand reaching out, but stopping short of touching me. You mean with Max? I nodded, unable to meet his gaze, the shame overwhelming. I know it sounds insane, and it was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I didn't know how to tell you. I was scared. The silence stretched between us thick with the weight of my confession. Jackdafer's jaw clenched, his eyes distant as he processed the information. I don't know what to say. Evelyn, it's a lot. I understand if you can't forgive me. I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've been carrying this guilt, this secret, and it's been eating away at me. I thought about leaving, about sparing you the pain of knowing, but I couldn't live with myself keeping this from you. He stood up abruptly, pacing the room, his hands running through his hair. I need some time to think. Evelyn, this isn't just about what happened. It's about trust, about our life together. I watched him, my heart max with every step he took away from me. I love you. Jack, I've never stopped loving you. Even through all of this, I need to know if there's any way we can move past this. He stopped pacing, turning to face me. His expression, a mix of pain and confusion. I love you too, Katie. But this is something I never imagined we'd have to deal with. I need to figure out if I can reconcile this in my mind. If we can still be us after this. The room felt colder, the distance between us growing with every second of silence. I could see the mural in the corner of my eye, its once vibrant colors, now a dull reminder of the life we had painted together, now marred by this dark brush stroke. I'll give you space, I said, standing up, feeling the need to escape the intensity of the moment. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Jackdafer didn't stop me as I walked past him, his silence speaks volumes. I closed the door to the guest room behind me, the soft click echoing like a final note in a symphony of our unraveling life. Lying in the unfamiliar bed, I stared at the ceiling, the shadows playing out the scenes of our life together, the joy, the laughter now overshadowed by this one moment of madness. I wondered if our love was strong enough to withstand this storm, or if this was the beginning of the end. The night stretched on each minute an eternity as I lay there waiting for a sign, a sound, anything from Jackdafer. But there was only silence, a silence that spoke of the chasm now between us, a silence that might never be filled again. And as I lay there, the weight of my secret now shared, I realized that the game I had started was far more complex than I had ever imagined. It wasn't just about Jackdafer's betrayal anymore. It was about mine, about the choices we make in the shadows of our lives, choices that could either save or destroy everything we've built. The complexity of our situation was now a part of me, a dark brushstroke on the canvas of our life, one that might never wash away. The confession was like ripping off a band-aid, painful and necessary. Jackdafer's initial reaction was shock, followed by a silence so profound it felt like the world had stopped. He left the room, and I heard the front door open and close. I thought that was at the end of us hours. Later he returned. We sat down and he listened as I explained everything, the confusion, the guilt, the fear. His response was not what I expected. Instead of anger or disgust, there was a deep sadness, a shared pain. We need help, Evelyn, he said. Finally, we'll get through this together, but we need professional help. Together we sought therapy, both individually and as a couple. It was a long road filled with difficult conversations, tears, and moments of doubt. But through it all, Jackdafer's commitment to our marriage, to understanding and healing, never wavered. Max was rehomed with a family friend, a decision that was heart-wrenching but necessary for our recovery. Life moved forward, not back to what it was, but into something new, something forged from the ashes of our darkest moment. The therapy sessions were intense. We delved into the roots of our issues, not just the incident with Max, but also Jackdafer's infidelity. It was like peeling back layers of an onion, each session revealing more about ourselves and each other than we'd ever known. There were days when the progress seemed minuscule, where every word felt like a battle. I remember one session where the therapist asked us to describe how we felt about each other. At that moment I feel betrayed, Jackdafer said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes not needing mine. But also I feel responsible for pushing you to that point. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words pressing down on me. I feel guilty, ashamed. I admit it, my voice Max. But also I'm scared, Jack. Scared that we might not make it through this. The therapist, with her calm demeanor, guided us through these confessions, helping us to see not just the pain, but the underlying love that still existed. She taught us techniques to communicate better, to listen not just to the words, but the emotions behind them. We started to rebuild trust slowly, paints to Maxley. Jackdafer began to share more about his feelings, his struggles with work, his loneliness when away on trips. I, in turn, opened up about my insecurities, my fears of not being enough, of losing him. One evening, after a particularly grueling session, we sat in our living room, the mural, now a backdrop to our healing. Rather than a reminder of our pain, Jackdafer took my hand, his touch gentle, almost hesitant. Evelyn, I've been thin, Max, he started, his voice steady but soft. I know we've been through hell, but I believe we can come out stronger. I want to really try to make this work. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just from relief, but from a newfound hope. I want that too, Jack, more than anything. We decided to take small steps. We planned date nights not just to escape the routine, but to reconnect. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our future. Each conversation was like mending a tear in the fabric of our relationship. The decision to rehome Max was one of the hardest. He was part of our family, but his presence was a constant reminder of that night. We found him a loving home with a friend who had always adored him. Saying goodbye was like losing a piece of our heart, but it was necessary for our healing. Life began to take on a new rhythm. We started to laugh again, not the forced, hollow laughs of before, but genuine, heartfelt laughter. We painted over the mural not to erase it, but to transform it into something that symbolized our journey. Our resilience therapy continued, and with each session we learned more about forgiveness, about the complexity of human emotions. We learned that love isn't just about the good times, but about how you handle the darkest moments. One day, as we sat in our newly painted living room, Jackdafer turned to me, his eyes reflecting a depth of emotion I hadn't seen in a long time. Evelyn, I want you to know, I forgive you, and I hope you can forgive me too. We've both made mistakes, but I believe in us. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. I forgive you, Jack, and I'm sorry, truly sorry. We held each other, the embrace, not just of lovers, but of three souls who had navigated through a storm and found their way back to each other. The mural, now vibrant with new colors, seemed to watch over us, a testament to our journey, our pain, and our healing. Could we truly rebuild our life? From this, the answer was unfolding. With each passing day, each shared smile, each moment of understanding, we were not the same people who had started this journey, but perhaps that was the point. We were evolving together into something new, something forged from the ashes of our darkest moment. And as we looked at the mural, now a symbol of our resilience, we knew that whatever the future held, we would face it together with a love that had been tested and had grown stronger for it. If this story resonated with you, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us craft more engaging stories for you.